The Silver Line Mall was alive that Saturday afternoon, a symphony of laughter, footsteps and the hum of busy conversations echoing off polished floors. The air smelled of buttered popcorn, new clothes and freshly brewed coffee. Families moved from one store to another, hands full of shopping bags, faces full of excitement. Children tugged at their parents, begging for toys and ice cream, while teenagers snapped selfies under the glowing mall lights. But among all that noise and color was Amara, a 7-year-old black girl with warm brown eyes that seemed to hold more understanding than her age should allow. Her hair was tied into neat braids by her mother, Ruth, that morning, the same mother who now walked beside her, her janitor's uniform still visible beneath her coat. To everyone else, it was just another day at the mall. But to Amara it was special, because she rarely got to come here. Her mother worked long shifts cleaning offices and hotels, sometimes leaving before sunrise and returning after dark. Money was tight, but Ruth made sure her daughter never felt poor in spirit. "Stay close, baby," Ruth said, holding her hand tightly as they walked past bright window displays. "We'll grab some snacks, then I'll pick up groceries, okay?" Amara nodded happily. "Can we look at the toy store after, Mama?" Ruth smiled. "We'll see." Amara's eyes sparkled. She loved watching other kids at the mall, the ones with big balloons, colorful shoes, and parents who bought them everything. But even when she didn't have those things, she always smiled. Because what she did have was her mother's love, and a heart that saw beauty in the simplest things. They stopped near the fountain in the mall's center, a huge marble circle where coins glittered at the bottom, tossed there by people making wishes. Amara leaned closer, her reflection rippling in the water. "What would you wish for, Mama?" she asked. Ruth chuckled softly. "For you to stay as kind as you are." Amara giggled, then closed her eyes and whispered her own wish. She didn't wish for toys or candy. She wished that one day she could help her mum rest, so she wouldn't have to clean other people's messes anymore. When she opened her eyes again, something caught her attention. Just a few steps away, sitting on the cold tile floor near the fountain, was a little blonde-haired girl, no older than 6. Her bright pink dress looked brand new, her tiny shoes sparkling as if they had never touched dirt. But her face was red and wet with tears. Her arms were wrapped around her knees and her sobs were so soft that people passed by without noticing. Everyone was too busy, too distracted to see a lost child right in front of them. But Amara noticed. "She always did, Mama," she said quietly, tugging her mother's sleeve. "That girl. She's crying." Ruth turned her head, her expression shifting from tiredness to concern. "Oh dear." Before Ruth could react, Amara had already let go of her hand and taken a few careful steps toward the crying girl. Her heart thumped with both worry and courage. "Hi," Amara said softly, kneeling beside her. "Are you okay?" The little girl looked up, her blue eyes filled with fear and confusion. I can't find my daddy," she whimpered. Amara's chest tightened. "Oh no, you lost him?" She nodded, wiping her tears with tiny fingers. "He was right there and then—" "He wasn't." Amara didn't know what to say at first. She'd never been lost before, but she could imagine how scary it must feel. Surrounded by strangers, everyone rushing past, no familiar face in sight. She reached into her small backpack and pulled out her pink water bottle. "Here," she said gently, handing it over. "You should drink some water. It helps when you cry a lot." The little girl hesitated, then took it. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "What's your name?" Amara asked. "Lila." Amara smiled. "That's a pretty name." "I'm Amara." Lila gave a tiny, shaky smile. For the first time since she'd been found, she looked less scared. Ruth approached them, her eyes soft. "Sweetheart, don't worry. We'll help you find your daddy, okay?" Lila nodded quietly, gripping Amara's hand. As the three of them stood there, the noise of the mall continued. Music playing, footsteps echoing, people laughing. But in that one small corner, something different was happening. A quiet act of kindness unfolding between two little girls from completely different worlds. Amara didn't know who Lila's father was, or where she came from. She didn't know that this single moment, this tiny decision to help, would change her life forever. All she knew was that a little girl was lost. And she had found her, and in that instant something magical began, the kind of moment that turns into a story the world never forgets. Ruth hurried toward her daughter, her cleaning shoes squeaking softly against the polished mall floor. When she saw the scene, little Amara crouched beside the crying girl, her heart clenched. "Sweetheart," Ruth said gently, bending down, "don't bother her, baby. Maybe her parents are just around," but Amara didn't move. She looked up at her mother with those wide, earnest eyes that always seemed to see the good in everything. "Mama, she's lost," Amara whispered. "She can't find her daddy." Ruth's gaze shifted to the little blonde girl, whose tear-streaked face and trembling lips told the whole story. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her clothes screamed wealth. A pink designer dress, tiny pearl bracelet, polished shoes. But right now, none of that mattered. She was just a scared child. Ruth knelt beside her. "Oh, honey," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair away from the girl's forehead. "Where did you last see your daddy?" The little girl sniffled. I saw a toy shop, and then I turned around and he wasn't there anymore." Ruth's eyes scanned the busy mall. Crowds moved like waves, people rushing by holding shopping bags, tapping phones. The security guards stood near the entrance chatting, not noticing anything. No one seemed to care that a small girl sat alone, lost in the middle of the chaos. "All right," Ruth said gently, forcing a reassuring smile. "We'll help you find him, okay?" Amara nodded, holding Lila's hand tightly as if she'd just made a promise. Ruth helped the little girl stand up. Her hands were cold and shaking. "You're safe with us now," Ruth said. "Let's go sit somewhere quiet first." They walked toward a nearby bench near the smoothie stand. The mall lights glowed above them, reflecting on the polished tiles like stars. Ruth pulled a small tissue from her purse and wiped the child's face. Amara sat beside her, swinging her legs. "Don't cry, okay? My mama always says crying too long makes your eyes tired," she said, smiling warmly. Lila gave a small giggle through her tears. "Your mama's right." Ruth chuckled softly. "You see, now you're smiling already." She handed Lila Amara's pink water bottle. "Here, have a sip, sweetheart." Lila took a careful drink, her small hands trembling less now. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Ruth said. "And now tell me, do you remember what your daddy was wearing?" Lila thought hard, scrunching her face. "A black suit. And he was talking to someone on the phone. He said, 'Stay close, pumpkin.' But then I saw the big toy bear in the window and—" her voice broke. "And when I turned back, he was gone." Ruth placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. We'll find him." Amara nodded firmly, her little face serious. "We can ask the guards, Mama. They have those talkie-walkie things." Ruth smiled. "You're right, baby. Let's go." As they stood up, Amara offered her hand again. "Come on, Lila. I'll hold your hand so you don't get lost again." Lila hesitated, then smiled faintly and slipped her tiny hand into Amara's. The two girls walked side by side, one with a small backpack and scuffed sneakers, the other in polished shoes that clicked softly on the tiles. Different worlds, yet somehow their hands fit perfectly together. They approached the security office tucked behind a row of vending machines. Inside, a guard was sipping coffee and glancing at the monitors. He looked up when Ruth stepped in. "Excuse me," she said politely. "This little girl is lost." "Her name's Lila." The guard blinked, setting down his cup. "Lila? Wait." He grabbed his walkie-talkie quickly, his voice urgent. "We found her." "Repeat, we found the missing child." Amara's eyes widened. "Missing child?" she whispered. The guard nodded. "Her father's been searching everywhere for her. He's been going crazy for the last half hour." Ruth turned to Lila. "See? You'll be with your daddy soon." Lila smiled weakly, clutching Amara's hand tighter. "Thank you." Amara tilted her head. "You're kind of famous, huh?" Lila giggled softly through her sniffles. "Not really. My daddy's just important, I guess." Before Ruth could respond, she heard hurried footsteps echoing down the hall, the kind that came from someone running with all the fear in the world. The sound grew louder. Then, a man's desperate voice called out, trembling with panic. "Lila!" The air seemed to freeze around them. Lila gasped, turning toward the voice. "Daddy!" she cried, her face lighting up like the sun after a storm. She let go of Amara's hand and ran, her pink dress fluttering behind her, straight toward the tall man in the black suit. The moment was pure emotion, a lost child returning to her world, and two strangers standing quietly, hearts full, watching kindness come full circle. And as Ruth placed a gentle hand on Amara's shoulder, she whispered, See, baby? You did something beautiful today. Amara looked up, smiling softly. We found her daddy. Ruth nodded, her eyes glistening. Yes, but I think we also found something more. A reminder that kindness still matters. The security guard's voice echoed through the small office as he spoke urgently into his radio. Copy that. Missing child located near the East Fountain. Repeat, child located. Name, Lila Bennett. The name carried weight, the kind of name that made everyone in the room pause. Ruth didn't know it yet, but Bennett wasn't just any name. It was a name that appeared on buildings, luxury stores, and billboards across the city. Ruth gently placed her hand on Lila's shoulder. See, sweetheart? They're already finding your daddy. Lila clutched her hand nervously, eyes darting toward the door. She was excited but still scared. He's coming? She whispered. Amara smiled softly, kneeling beside her new friend. Of course he's coming. Daddies never stop looking for their little girls. Lila's lower lip trembled. I thought maybe he forgot me. Amara shook her head firmly. No one forgets someone they love. That small, innocent line hit Ruth's heart like a gentle wave. She looked at her daughter, a child who had learned love through struggle, not luxury, and realized how pure her heart was. Outside the glass window of the office, the mall continued buzzing. The sounds of laughter, elevator dings, and announcements over the speakers filled the air. But in this little corner, time felt like it had slowed. The guard put down his radio. Mr. Bennett's on his way. He's been searching every floor, talking to security himself. You should have seen him. Looked like his world was falling apart. Ruth nodded quietly. I can imagine. Lila fidgeted in her seat, holding on to Amara's hand. Her face was still red from crying, but her eyes now held a flicker of hope. Amara leaned closer. You know what? When my mama gets lost in the grocery store, Ruth interrupted with a chuckle. Amara grinned, continuing, I just follow the smell of her perfume. Maybe your daddy has something like that too. Lila giggled, her small shoulders relaxing for the first time. He smells like coffee and soap. Well, Amara said proudly, if we smell that, we'll know he's close. Even the security guards smiled at their innocence. The whole room seemed lighter. Minutes passed. Lila sat near the door, eyes fixed on the hallway outside, listening for footsteps. Every few seconds she'd ask softly, Do you think that's him? Ruth would smile gently. Soon, sweetheart. He'll be here soon. The guard's radio buzzed again. Mr. Bennett is approaching from the north wing. Escorting him now. Lila jumped up, her hands shaking. That's my daddy. Amara squeezed her hand. See? Told you he'd come. For Ruth, watching the two girls, one dressed in wealth, one in simplicity, standing side by side, felt surreal. Life had a strange way of bringing hearts together that were never supposed to meet. Then, from down the hall came the echo of fast, desperate footsteps. The sound grew louder with every beat. Ruth instinctively stepped aside, holding Amara's shoulder, and then he appeared. A tall man in a crisp black suit, tie loosened, hair disheveled, eyes frantic. He looked like he'd been running for his life. His phone was in one hand, his other hand trembling as he scanned the area. When his gaze landed on the small pink dress by the door, he froze. Lila! He shouted, voice breaking. Lila gasped, her entire face lighting up. Daddy! She ran to him, her little shoes tapping across the tiles. The sound of her laughter mixed with the echo of his sobs as he dropped to his knees and caught her in his arms. He hugged her so tightly it looked as if he never wanted to let go again. His voice cracked as he whispered, Oh, thank God. I thought I lost you forever. People nearby stopped to watch. Security guards, shoppers, even workers from nearby stores. A few mothers wiped their eyes quietly. Ruth smiled softly, pulling Amara close. See that, baby? That's what love looks like when it's scared. Amara nodded, her eyes wide, watching the reunion. Lila clung to her father's neck. Daddy, I was scared. But Amara and her mommy helped me. Mr. Bennett turned his head, his eyes meeting Ruth's. He stood slowly, still holding Lila close. His expensive suit, now slightly wrinkled, couldn't hide the exhaustion and gratitude in his face. You found her? He asked, voice trembling. Ruth nodded. She was by the fountain. We just stayed with her until someone came. He took a deep breath, trying to hold back emotion. I can't thank you enough. You have no idea what this means. He reached into his pocket instinctively, but Ruth gently raised her hand. Please, sir. You don't have to do that. We didn't help her for money. He stopped, looking at her with surprise, genuine surprise, as if kindness without price was something he rarely saw. Then his eyes fell on Amara, small, smiling, holding Lila's pink bracelet. "Are you the one who stayed with my daughter?" he asked softly. Amara nodded shyly. She was crying. "I just wanted her to smile again." The man's expression softened completely. He knelt down, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're a very special girl." Amara blushed, smiling. "That's what Mama says, too." Mr. Bennett looked back at Ruth and said quietly, "Your daughter, she has a heart of gold." Ruth smiled proudly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "She's my whole world." Mr. Bennett nodded slowly, still holding Lila close. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this encounter with two strangers in a crowded mall, was about to change all of their lives forever. The moment the tall man appeared, time seemed to slow. The noise of the mall, chatter, music, footsteps, all faded into a distant echo. Every sound blurred into the heavy rhythm of one man's desperate heartbeat as he sprinted across the shining marble floor. "Lila!" he shouted again, his voice cracking under the weight of fear and relief. The small blonde girl turned instantly, her eyes wide. "Daddy!" The little girl's pink dress fluttered like a ribbon in the wind as she ran toward him. In that instant, nothing else existed. Not the curious stares of the crowd, not the busy shoppers who stopped mid-step. All that existed was a father and a daughter. Running toward each other like gravity itself was pulling them together. When he reached her, Mr. Bennett fell to his knees and wrapped his arms around her so tightly, as if holding her could stop the world from ever taking her away again. He buried his face in her golden hair, his shoulders trembling. "Oh, God, my little girl," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I lost you. I thought—" Lila hugged him back just as tightly, tiny hands clutching his neck. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I saw the teddy bear and I wanted to look and—" He pulled back just enough to cup her face. "Shh, it's okay. You're safe now. You're safe." His eyes were red, his cheeks wet. He kissed her forehead over and over, whispering prayers of gratitude that only he and heaven could hear. Ruth and Amara stood a few steps away, watching quietly. Ruth's heart softened as she took in the scene. A man who looked powerful, wealthy and strong, now completely undone by the fear of losing what mattered most. Amara tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered, "He was really scared, Mama." Ruth nodded gently. "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes even grown-ups cry when they love someone that much." After a long moment, Mr. Bennett finally stood, still holding Lila close to his chest. He looked around, scanning the faces in the crowd until his eyes landed on Ruth and Amara. He walked toward them, his steps slow, shaky, each one heavy with emotion. When he reached them, he spoke, his voice still trembling. "Was it you? You found her?" Ruth gave a modest smile. "Yes, sir." She was sitting by the fountain, crying. "My daughter noticed her first." He looked down at Amara, the small girl with bright eyes and calm confidence. "You did?" Amara nodded shyly. She looked sad. "I just wanted to help." The man crouched so that he was eye level with her. For a moment he simply looked, really looked, at this little girl who had shown his daughter more compassion than 100 strangers had. "You have a brave heart," he said softly, "and a kind one." Amara smiled a little, her dimples showing. "Mama says helping people makes the world brighter." Mr. Bennett's lips curved into a shaky smile. "Your mama is a very wise woman." He turned to Ruth, his expression filled with gratitude and exhaustion. "You have no idea what you've done for me. She's all I have. I can't imagine what would have happened if—" He stopped, his voice breaking again. Ruth shook her head gently. "You don't have to imagine, sir. What matters is she's safe now." For a moment he just stood there, this man who looked like he belonged in boardrooms and mansions, struggling to find words. Then instinctively, he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a thick leather wallet. But before he could open it, Ruth raised a hand and said softly, "Please don't. We didn't do it for money." He froze. His hand stopped halfway. His expression shifted from polite gratitude to quiet surprise, as if he hadn't heard those words in a long, long time. Then, slowly, he lowered the wallet. "Most people," he began quietly, They don't say that anymore. Ruth smiled humbly. Maybe most people just need a reason to remember kindness again. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. Lila, still in his arms, looked at Amara. Daddy, can Amara come play with me sometime? Mr. Bennet blinked. The question caught him off guard, but it made him laugh softly, wiping the last of his tears. Of course she can, he said. Any time. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a sleek silver business card and handed it to Ruth. My name's Richard Bennet, he said. Please call me. You didn't just help my daughter. You gave me back my life. Ruth hesitated but accepted the card with a small nod. Thank you, Mr. Bennet. He looked down at Amara one last time, his voice quiet but full of emotion. You're a very special girl, Amara. Don't ever stop being who you are. Amara smiled. I won't. As he turned to leave, holding Lila close, the mall lights shimmered above them like stars. Ruth and Amara watched until they disappeared into the crowd, a father and daughter reunited by fate, and a little girl whose heart had just changed a billionaire's world without even knowing it. Ruth exhaled softly, placing a hand over her heart. You see, baby, she said to Amara. Even the smallest kindness can bring light to the darkest moments. Amara nodded, still watching where Lila had gone. I hope she remembers me. Ruth smiled faintly. Oh, she will. Some people never forget the ones who help them find their way home. And somewhere in the crowd, Mr. Bennet turned back for one last glance, eyes filled with gratitude, before disappearing into the golden light of the mall's exit. The mall had quieted down after the reunion. The rush of emotion still hung in the air like soft music, gentle, bittersweet, unforgettable. Ruth held Amara's hand as Mr. Bennet, still clutching Lila, approached them once more. His expensive black shoes clicked against the marble, but his steps were slower now, calmer. Every breath deep and heavy like a man who had finally found his way out of a storm. He stopped in front of them, still holding Lila close. The bright mall lights reflected in his tired blue eyes. He looked down at Amara with something deeper than gratitude, a kind of wonder. So, he said softly, crouching down to her level, You're the little hero who helped my daughter. Amara fidgeted shyly, hiding halfway behind her mother. I'm not a hero, she said, her voice small but clear. I just didn't want her to be scared. He smiled, shaking his head. You'd be surprised how many people walked past her and did nothing. What you did, it was brave, Amara blinked, but shouldn't everyone help someone who's lost? That innocent question hit him like lightning. For a moment he couldn't even answer. His throat tightened. Here was a little girl, wearing hand-me-down sneakers and carrying a backpack patched with stitches, teaching him a lesson people in his world had long forgotten. He smiled faintly. You're absolutely right, Amara. Lila, still in his arms, looked at her new friend. Daddy, can Amara come to our house? We can play tea party and draw. Her father chuckled softly, brushing her hair. I think that's a wonderful idea. He turned back to Ruth, pulling a small silver card from his pocket. This is my number. My name's Richard Bennet. Please call me sometime. I'd love for the girls to meet again, and I owe you more than I can ever say. Ruth took the card, glancing at the elegant black writing embossed in silver. It looked expensive, foreign in her rough hands. That's very kind of you, Mr. Bennet, but really you don't owe us anything. We were just in the right place at the right time. He gave a soft laugh, shaking his head. Ma'am, when I didn't see Leela by my side, my world stopped. I would have traded every dollar I've ever made just to have her back. You didn't just help her. You gave me back my life. Ruth's eyes softened. She could feel the honesty in his words. Then maybe we both just did what any parent would do. Protect what we love. For a long second, no one spoke. The world seemed to stand still. Two mothers' hearts connecting through understanding, two little girls bonded by innocence, and a man learning what real wealth meant for the first time in years. Then Lila turned to Amara again, holding her tiny hand. Thank you for helping me, Amara. Amara smiled. You don't have to thank me. Friends help each other. Friends, Lila repeated, her face lighting up. I like that. Mr. Bennet smiled softly at the two girls. You see, Lila, even when we have all the things money can buy, the best gifts are people who care. Lila nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. Like Amara, Ruth felt tears rising in her eyes. She hadn't expected this day, this ordinary mall trip, to become something that would touch so many hearts. Mr. Bennet straightened his posture, trying to regain composure, though his voice still trembled with emotion. "Miss Ruth, may I ask, where do you work?" "I do cleaning," she replied honestly, her tone calm but proud. "Mostly offices and hotels. It's not much, but it's honest." He nodded with deep respect. "Then you've earned more in life than many people I know. You've taught your daughter something that can't be bought." Ruth smiled faintly. "I just teach her to see people, not things." He paused, taking in her words like they were the most valuable lesson he'd ever heard. "You're an incredible mother," he said quietly. Ruth lowered her gaze, touched. "I just try my best." He nodded again, almost to himself. Then, turning toward Amara, he said softly, "You're always welcome at our home. And if you ever need anything at all, you call me." Amara looked up curiously. "Even if I just want to play with Lila?" He laughed gently. "Especially if you just want to play with Lila." The girls giggled together, their laughter soft and pure, the sound of two hearts meeting somewhere beyond the walls of class or color or wealth. As they parted ways, Mr. Bennet carried Lila away in his arms, her head resting on his shoulder. Ruth watched them disappear into the distance, his tall frame blending into the crowd. Amara held the shiny silver card in her small hands, the name glinting under the mall's lights. "Mama," she asked softly, "he's rich, isn't he?" Ruth smiled, brushing a braid from her daughter's face. "Yes, baby. But today you showed him what real riches look like." Amara tilted her head. "What's that?" "Kindness," Ruth said, smiling. "The kind that money can't buy." Amara looked down at the card again, then slipped it into her pocket carefully, not because it was fancy, but because it reminded her of something precious. That day, two lives from different worlds had crossed by accident, or maybe by fate. But in that brief meeting, hearts had changed. A billionaire had been humbled. A mother had been reminded that goodness still mattered. And a little black girl with a big heart had unknowingly planted a seed of friendship that would bloom far beyond that mall. 2 weeks passed since that unforgettable day at the mall. Life for Ruth and Amara returned to its quiet rhythm. Morning school rushes, long work shifts, and laughter over small dinners. But every night before bed, Amara would take out the shiny silver card Mr. Bennet had given her and trace her little fingers over the letters. "Bennet Enterprises," she whispered softly one night, curiosity glinting in her eyes. To her it was just a name, but it carried a quiet magic, Ruth noticed. "Still thinking about your new friend?" she asked, folding laundry beside her. Amara nodded, smiling. "Layla said she wanted to play tea party. Do you think she remembers me?" Ruth's heart softened. "I'm sure she does, sweetheart. Some friendships don't need time to grow, they just stay." Amara grinned, clutching the card close. "Maybe one day she'll come visit." Ruth chuckled quietly. Maybe one day. But that one day arrived sooner than either of them expected. It was a sunny Saturday morning when a sleek black car pulled up outside their modest apartment building. The engine purred softly, its silver logo gleaming in the light. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering in surprise. No one in that area ever saw cars like that. Ruth was inside washing dishes when a gentle knock came at the door. She wiped her hands quickly, thinking it might be a neighbor or delivery man. But when she opened the door, her breath caught. There stood Richard Bennet, dressed in casual jeans and a crisp shirt, holding Lila's hand. The little girl beamed from ear to ear. "Good morning," Mr. Bennet said warmly. "I hope we're not intruding." Ruth blinked, stunned. "Mr. Bennet? Oh no, of course not. Please come in." Amara, hearing the familiar voice, ran into the room, and when she saw who it was, her face lit up brighter than the morning sun. "Lila!" she squealed, rushing over. The two girls hugged tightly, laughing like they'd known each other for years. Mr. Bennet smiled at the sight, then turned to Ruth. "I hope this isn't too sudden. Lila's been asking to see Amara every single day since that afternoon. I finally had to make her wish come true." Ruth laughed softly, wiping her hands on her apron. "You didn't have to come all the way here, but I'm glad you did. She's been talking about Lila non-stop." He looked around their small but neat apartment. Simple furniture, colorful drawings taped to the wall, the smell of pancakes in the air. "You have a lovely home," he said sincerely. Ruth smiled humbly. "It's not much, but it's ours." For a moment there was silence, the kind that carries respect. Mr. Bennet knelt beside the girls, who were now sitting cross-legged on the floor playing with dolls. "Lila tells me you like drawing," he said to Amara. Amara nodded proudly. "Yes, I draw people and dreams and sometimes animals. I want to make books one day." His eyebrows lifted. "Books, huh? That's a wonderful dream," Amara grinned. "Mama says dreams grow when you water them with kindness." He chuckled softly. "Your mama is a very wise woman." Ruth smiled quietly from the kitchen, her heart full. After a few minutes, Mr. Bennet reached into a bag he'd brought and pulled out a small box wrapped in blue paper. "Lila picked this out for you," he said. Amara's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a beautiful sketchbook, thick and creamy with golden edges, and a set of professional drawing pencils. Her mouth dropped open. "For me?" Lila nodded eagerly. "Now you can draw anything you want." Tears welled up in Ruth's eyes as she watched her daughter's joy. That's so thoughtful of you." Mr. Bennet shook his head softly. "No, it's the least we could do. She gave my daughter comfort when no one else did. You can't put a price on that." Ruth lowered her gaze, touched beyond words. The girls spent the next hour drawing side by side, Amara sketching flowers and sunshine, Lila adding hearts and rainbows. Their laughter filled the room like music. Mr. Bennet and Ruth sat nearby watching. "You know," he said quietly, "since that day I've been thinking a lot about perspective. You see, I've spent most of my life building wealth. Companies, houses, everything money can buy. But lately it all feels empty." Ruth turned to him gently. "Maybe that's because what fills us isn't always made of gold." He nodded slowly, her words striking deep. "You're right. Meeting you and Amara, it reminded me what real value looks like." Ruth smiled softly. "Kindness has a way of doing that." He looked down at the girls again, both now giggling over a crooked rainbow drawing. "Hey, it's funny," he said. "I came here to thank you, but I feel like I'm the one learning." Ruth's eyes shimmered with emotion. Maybe that's how life works. We help someone and somewhere we heal too. Mr. Bennet smiled, genuinely gratefully. "You're right." When it was time to leave, Lila hugged Amara tightly. "Next time," she said brightly, "you come to my house." Amara grinned. "Deal." As the black car pulled away, Ruth stood by the door, her hand resting on Amara's shoulder. "You see, baby," she said softly, "good hearts always find each other, no matter how far apart they are." Amara nodded, clutching her new sketchbook to her chest. "And kindness travels faster than cars." Ruth laughed gently, kissing her forehead. "Yes, it does." That day their little home felt bigger, not because of gifts, but because love had crossed the line between two very different worlds. A month had passed since Mr. Bennet and Lila's visit, but the warmth of that day still lingered like sunlight in Ruth and Amara's hearts. The sketchbook, that beautiful golden-edged treasure, had become Amara's most prized possession. Every page was filled with dreams, love, and hope. She drew everything she saw, her mama cleaning with a tired smile, the mall where she'd met Lila. The sky painted orange at sunset, but one picture stood out from all the rest, a drawing of two little girls holding hands, one dark-skinned, one light-skinned, surrounded by hearts and flowers. She titled it in bold letters, "Friends Without Walls." One evening, while Ruth prepared dinner, Amara sat by the window sketching. The soft hum of the city mixed with the scratch of her pencil on paper. Her heart was full, but she didn't know that her drawings were about to change everything. A few days later, Ruth received a call. The number flashed unfamiliar on her old phone, and she almost didn't answer until she saw the name. Richard Bennet. Her heart skipped. "Hello?" "Good evening, Ms. Ruth," came the warm, familiar voice. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all, Mr. Bennet," she said quickly. "Is everything okay?" He chuckled. "More than okay. I wanted to tell you something, and actually to ask a favor." Ruth frowned slightly, curious. "Of course," he continued, his tone touched with excitement. "When Lila visited, she brought back one of Amara's drawings, the one of the two girls holding hands. She's been showing it to everyone, even her teachers." Ruth smiled softly. "That sounds like Lila." "Well," he went on, "one of her teachers happens to be connected to a children's art foundation. They were so moved by the message of that drawing, Friends Without Walls, that they want to display it in their next exhibition." Ruth froze, her hand trembling slightly. "You mean Amara's drawing? In an exhibition?" "Yes," he said warmly. "They want to feature it as the central piece in a campaign about friendship, unity and compassion. It's not just an art show, it's a message to the world, and they'd like Amara to attend as the artist." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God! She's going to be so happy. She's only 8, Mr. Bennett. She just draws what's in her heart." He smiled softly. "That's exactly why her art matters." When Ruth told Amara the news, the little girl screamed with joy and jumped into her mother's arms. "They liked my drawing, Mama?" "For real?" Ruth nodded, laughing through tears. "For real, baby. They want to show your drawing to the world." Amara's eyes sparkled. "Then maybe people will remember to be kind too." Ruth hugged her tighter. "That's the best dream you could ever have." The night of the exhibition arrived. The grand gallery was filled with lights, art, and people dressed in elegant clothes. Ruth felt out of place in her simple floral dress, but Mr. Bennett met them at the entrance, smiling warmly. "Ruth, Amara," he greeted, bowing slightly. "You both look wonderful." Amara grinned, holding her sketchbook close. "Hi, Lila," she said, spotting her friend across the room. The two ran to each other instantly. Inside, a massive poster displayed Amara's drawing. The crowd stood in quiet admiration, some smiling, some wiping away tears. Under the image, a plaque read, "Friends Without Walls," by Amara Johnson, age 8. Mr. Bennett watched the reaction and turned to Ruth. "Look at that. Your daughter's kindness started this." Ruth's voice trembled. "I just wanted her to see people for who they are. I never thought the world would see her too." He smiled softly. "Sometimes the smallest hearts create the biggest ripples." A woman in a red dress approached, one of the foundation organizers. "Are you Amara's mother?" she asked. Ruth nodded shyly. "Your daughter's art touched everyone here," she said sincerely. "We'd like to offer her a full scholarship for our Youth Art Academy." "She has a gift the world needs." Ruth froze, unable to speak. "A scholarship?" The woman smiled. "Yes, all expenses covered. Her future deserves to be nurtured." Amara turned to her mother with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Mama, does that mean I can really be an artist one day?" Ruth knelt, cupping her face with trembling hands. "Yes, baby. You can be anything you want." Mr. Bennett stood nearby, watching the moment quietly. His eyes shimmered with pride, not just for Amara, but for what kindness had created. He leaned toward Ruth and said softly, "You see, Ruth, sometimes the people who have the least end up giving the world the most." Ruth looked at him with tears in her eyes. "And sometimes the richest people are the ones who finally learn what love looks like." The crowd applauded as Amara took a small bow beside her drawing, her face glowing under the lights. And somewhere in that bright gallery, surrounded by applause and hope, a little black girl with a big heart reminded everyone that real beauty wasn't in what we owned, but in how we cared. That one sketch, born from friendship and innocence, had turned into something far bigger than any of them could imagine, a gift that changed everything. The night of the art exhibition would be a memory Amara and Ruth carried for the rest of their lives. But what came afterward, that was the true miracle. In the weeks that followed, Amara's artwork spread far beyond the gallery. Photos of Friends Without Walls went viral on social media, shared thousands of times. People around the world wrote comments like, "A child reminded us what humanity means. We need more Amaras in this world." Newspapers picked up her story. Little Black Girl's drawing brings a message of unity. It touched hearts across oceans, yet at home, life for Ruth and Amara remained humble. Ruth still cleaned offices, still woke up before sunrise, still packed Amara's little lunchbox with love. But now every morning, her heart felt lighter, because her daughter's art was lighting up hearts she'd never meet. One breezy afternoon, a knock echoed on their door again. Ruth opened it and froze. Standing there was Mr. Bennett, holding a large brown envelope and smiling warmly. "Mr. Bennett," she said, surprised. "You didn't have to come all this way." He chuckled softly. "I wanted to see this moment in person." Amara ran to the door. "Mr. Bennett, Lila!" she squealed as Lila peeked from behind him. The girls hugged like long-lost sisters. He handed the envelope to Ruth. "This is for you both." Ruth blinked, confused. "What is it?" "Just open it," he said gently. Inside were several official-looking papers, and Ruth's hands began to shake as she realized what she was holding: a scholarship certificate, documents of financial sponsorship, and a letter of acceptance from one of the most prestigious art academies in the city, all in Amara's name. Her breath caught. "Mr. Bennett." He raised his hand softly. "Before you say anything, let me explain. The foundation wanted to help, but I wanted to do more. You see, your daughter gave my family something priceless: perspective, gratitude, love. I wanted to return that gift in a way that truly honors what she's done." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "But we can't accept something this big." Mr. Bennett smiled warmly. "Ruth, sometimes it's okay to let the world be kind back. You've taught your daughter to give. Now it's her turn to receive." Ruth covered her mouth, emotion overflowing. "I don't know how to thank you," he nodded softly. "You already have." Amara looked up at him innocently. "Does this mean I can draw forever?" He chuckled, kneeling beside her. "Yes, Amara. You can draw for the rest of your life, and the world will be lucky to see it." Lila grinned. "And I'll come to every art show." Amara giggled, hugging her friend tight. "You're my forever friend." Ruth wiped her eyes, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "Mr. Bennett, you've done more than we ever dreamed of. But may I say something?" He smiled. "Of course." She looked into his eyes, steady and kind. "What you're doing for Amara, it isn't charity. It's love. And I'll make sure she always knows that." He nodded, touched by her words. "You already have, Ruth. You already have." Months passed and seasons changed. Amara began attending her new art school, nervous at first, then blossoming like a flower in the sun. Her teachers adored her imagination. She drew children of all colors playing under the same sky, mothers holding hands, strangers smiling together, and through it all, she stayed humble. She still wore her old backpack, still said please and thank you, and still believed that kindness could change the world. Every weekend, Lila and Mr. Bennett would visit. Ruth would make her famous pancakes, while the girls painted together on the living room floor. Over time, something beautiful happened. Their friendship grew into family. Mr. Bennett often told Ruth, "You know, I used to think success meant building skyscrapers and signing deals. But now, I think success is seeing two little girls laughing together, proof that love breaks walls money can't." Ruth would smile quietly, her heart full. "Maybe God lets us cross paths with people who remind us of what really matters." He nodded slowly. Maybe so. Years later, Amara's drawings would hang in galleries across the country. She'd grow into a talented young artist whose message never changed. That kindness is the color that paints the world whole. At every exhibition, she'd still tell the story of a day at the mall, when she found a lost little girl who happened to be a billionaire's daughter, and how that small act of compassion rewrote their destinies. In interviews, when asked about her inspiration, Amara would always smile and say, "I just drew what my mama taught me, to see people, not money, hearts, not walls." And somewhere in the audience, Ruth would sit quietly with tears in her eyes, whispering, "That's my baby." That single afternoon at the mall had changed everything, not because a billionaire met a poor child, but because two hearts, pure and open, met without judgment. In a world full of walls, one act of kindness built a bridge that carried love across class, color, and circumstance, proving once again that the smallest people can leave the biggest marks. And as Amara's art continued to touch the world, one thing became clear: real riches aren't measured in money, but in hearts that choose to care.